does.
All right. The first item, I'm getting the ones I'm looking for.
If you're not recording.
No, I don't. Let's see
Well, did you hear the one about the?
the three-legged dog.
Yeah.
My dad called him the arithmetic dog. 3 down, carry 1.
There you go. 3 down, carry one.
I know.
That's pretty good.
That'll work.
All right. So here we go, committee meetings. All right, judiciary, it's the contract review resolution that was tabled 49-24, city manager review form, council vacant seat policy and procedure, and review ordinance 32-15 and discuss ballot initiative petition. So let's start off with contract review resolution that was tabled 49-24. We have that, Greg? Well, thank you. All right, 49-24. Oh, this is the resolution with a 7-day period for council to review any written contract. Remember the one we talked about, any written contract prior to council action on the contract. I think that this is I think it's a great ordinance. I think we need to bring it back up. Is there any changes that needs done in this? I'll give you that.
Is 7 days enough?
Is 7 days enough? That was the
just
big
what I was
question.
gonna say. I think I brought up the fact that maybe we should take a little bit longer than a 7 day.
Well, let's just make it a nice even 10 days.
Yeah, yeah.
Two working days?
Yeah.
10 working days.
Yeah, 10
10
working days.
days, 2 weeks.
I mean, if we do contract negotiations long enough and well enough, you could set up the times to do the contract
Yeah.
negotiation before the deadline.
Yes.
Correct? All right. I have Chief Tolliver smiling at me. It makes me nervous. So, anyway, yes, so if we could make that, we just change that to 10 days. That would give us a even number of, a week and a half.
We need some time to
Yeah.
meet on it.
If somebody is out, time to meet and discuss and then bring forth legislation.
Gotcha.
So that would be able to, we'd be able to meet on the off, we'd be able to meet and discuss it on the off week of the normal meeting, and we'd be able to bring through the legislation.
That'd be a nice time.
Okay, so we've got that taken care of. Yes, sir.
Could there possibly be a provision on the 10 days? There could be a situation that requires it to be longer than that. Is there like language that could say, if need be, council agrees it could take longer than 10 days? Is that possible?
Under, we could put in there, could we put in there under emergency circumstances, possibly it could be extended, but a minimum of 10 days.
Yeah,
minimum 10 days.
Because like, obviously, didn't happen this year, but in July and August, we don't have a second meeting in those 2 months. So there could be extenuating circumstances, holidays.
We had executive stuff, so we call special meetings for stuff like that if it's
I'm just saying that if that provision could be added, because holidays could fall in that 10-day
Yeah.
period also.
Yes.
So what you're saying is maybe we need a little bit more time.
Not necessarily, I'm just saying that there's a provision to possibly
Okay,
allow
extend
if needed.
But we could just put in there a minimum of 10 days.
Yeah.
And that would take care of it. So,
Yeah, and we could put a maximum, I mean.
Yeah, maximum of 14.
Yeah.
Can't do more than 365 days.
There you go. You got it. I'm glad that's what we pay the big bucks. You're on here.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's a great thing. So therefore, city council is not,
I'm not getting it the night before.
we're not getting it the night before. We're not handing, I think that there needs to be some council discussion on where we're at with the rates or the percentage of increase so that, it can go through the auditor to see, gotta run things through before we sign them so that we make sure that the money is there.
To make sure council has some input to it.
Yes. Yeah. So, the next thing, is, let's see. City manager review form. We were talking about doing a, performance reviews. I think that, I definitely think there needs to be a uniform way that we do the review. I think that there needs to be, it needs to be implemented and it needs to be yearly. And it needs to be done by all council members at the same time and turned in. The biggest question is on those review forms, who would hold the review forms and where would they go?
Aren't we talking about getting us an HR department?
We have been in the process of talking about that for the last 3 to 4
And
years.
that would where the records would.
That's where the records would go,
Right.
and ideally, that's where the
Right.
records go, is to HR. But at this moment, we don't have an HR department, so I honestly think that all, city manager reviews would, I don't want to put that on, that would go to the law director, but because, I mean, that's kind of a conflict to have personnel files outside of it. I think that all of the files need to be in a secure location. I was, my only thought was maybe they could be put in the evidence room. Now, I don't know, that way that's off limits. A city manager could, I don't know what to do. What do you do
The
with it?
problem is, even the review form, the city manager would be entitled to review it at any time.
Right,
And with it being, nowadays with electronic copies and everything like that, it can be kept on disk and possibly with the council secretary.
I'd have to ask our lawyer, because here's the thing, that's personnel. And reviewing personnel is not necessarily a public record. I mean, we are direct
Right.
supervisors. We're, as a body, we are somewhat the direct supervisors, okay? So, when it comes to personnel issues, this is something that Mr. Rode could check on, because he's a genius when it comes to this stuff. He can look at this and say, hey, what, he's Googling it, I know, I can hear him figures teching, but the thing is, we need to make sure what happens to these forms and who has access to the forms.
And we're talking specifically about the city manager.
Review process,
Okay.
yes, because
Well, if we're talking city manager, we're talking all employees. You can't just single him out.
No,
You
I
have-
don't think we review them. He reviews them.
he reviews them, we review him.
But if we're gonna hold personnel records in a secure location, then it would have to cover all employees to be held in a secure
We have a-
location, not just one individual and singling them out.
All the employee personnel files are securely held in the city manager's office
Yes.
as it is. And it's up to the department head and the city manager's prerogative to do employee reviews currently. If you guys just went ahead and checked to see what another municipality does, because I'm sure there's plenty of other places in a similar situation.
We can do that.
Have a process already set up.
Find someone who's got a city manager and see what they do with that.
Well, I mean, but if we review the city manager, we're going to review him and tell him what the review is.
Yes,
Well, yeah.
yes.
Well, then why do we need to hide the form?
So it doesn't
Just
get
so
lost.
so they can't get lost. So that,
So they can't get lost and some individual comes in that is not part of the city manager or the council, picks it up, reads it, puts it out in the town, and this is what they're talking about.
I'm just throwing it out there. There was an investigation one time, a long time ago, that a tape recording, that everybody went to lunch and the tape recording got misplaced and erased in a hearing. Okay, and that's in the newspaper.
Watergate.
That's in the news, well, that's about 10 years after that.
Oh, okay.
But there was a time when there was a recording taken, an officer was deposed, and they went to lunch and they came back and the whole recording was gone. So I think we need to learn from that lesson. Not that you're trying to put some top secret thing in it. If the city manager wants to see the reviews, he's entitled to see the reviews.
But won't we talk to him about the review?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the final paperwork, it needs to be secure so it doesn't grow legs and walk away.
Absolutely.
It's transparency, so that there's a procedural, process for where those go. That's all.
You say so.
Well, I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm all for it.
Okay.
I just want to
I
put my
agree,
little
but, you
peanut.
know, it's gotta be basically consistent with everybody's personnel,
Yes. Yes.
not just,
We need to
City
check into
manager.
someone who has a
Right.
city manager and how they review. I think it would be great to contact them, see how they review him, what their process is. And see if we can come up with a process that is similar or, make our own up out of a thing.
like, when
Well, we
this,
have a template, right?
Yes,
Correct.
we've had several
Didn't you say
templates.
we had a template from like 70 or?
I had one from Houston, Texas, I think I found.
I think we could take a template and maybe,
There is a template out there, but we need to tweak it because it's very, very general.
yeah, that's what I mean, tweak it to fit our
Nelsonville standards.
situation with our city manager, because we couldn't go east or west and find out how they treat their city manager, even though this is the mayor
Well, the safety service director
would
in a
be.
mayor form of
Okay.
government is about like a city manager
Yeah.
because the safety service director is over top of water, sewer, fire, over everything. So yes,
Yeah.
so we could.
So we could ask them how they review
We
him.
could contact Ed Happens and ask how they.
I could do
He's the
that.
safety service director.
I asked those guys a lot of questions.
Yeah, ask him. Yeah, so, okay, we need to look into that. And
3215.
let's see here.
Council vacancy.
Council vacant seat. So the council vacant seat, traditionally, what we have done, unfortunately, we've all been through this way too many times. And kudos to Mr. Flowers and Mr. Clement and Mr. Flowers staying away. Life is not easy on council, and unfortunately, we go through a lot of turnover. The process in the prior was take letters of interest for a week. Take those letters before council, interview the people. It's been either in an executive session. I was interviewed in executive session years ago. I know the last few have been in open session. I don't have either way, it doesn't matter to me. I think part of me thinks that you get a better feel for the people in executive session because you can ask questions that, you can get to the heart of the matter because a lot of people will just not say the truth. But then at the same time, you want transparency, so you want everybody to know who it is. So what we did is we interviewed, and then after 30 days, was it 30 days? 45 days, 30 days, 30
gotta
days.
be before 30
Within
days.
30 days.
Within 30 days, if you could not find somebody, then we appointed the city man and
Council.
council.
the
Council president appointed, and then we never got, I never went over 45 days when I was there. And every one of those, then you have to contact the Board of Elections, give them their information. You have to update, so they can update the council roster.
So sounds like we've got a procedure already set.
I wrote up a little thing, and I don't know, Greg, did you bring that with you, did you? That
I don't have that with me.
I forgot about it, to where basically, as soon as there's an open position on council, every member needs to be notified of it on council.
I agree.
And then every member, upon finding out that we have a vacant seat, respond back to the, council secretary, that yes, we acknowledge that there's an open seat at this time. And then from there, we put out a bid for maybe 5-10 days, a notice or bid, whatever. And you get the individuals in there. And as the individuals get their applications in, the secretary goes through and notifies everybody on council who it is. So it's not a big secret of who's turned in and who's turned out. And then from that procedure there, we also have the time where the council can actually look up on the members and weigh their pros and cons. Then within, the 15 days, bring them in for an interview them all, and then we can either go into executive session and council can give their pros and cons to each other, who wants to do what and everything, come back out and vote. If nobody's been elected, the process immediately starts again until up to the 15 days. That gives the council two choices, two opportunities to select somebody, instead of the president going through and appointing somebody. Because if we don't do it, have a set procedure like that, then all the, council president has to do is not bring the meetings up, not call for the meetings, and then you delay to 30 days, and they automatically appoint. This is who I get.
That's happened. But anyway, so I think this, is it outlined in the charter? Is part of the,
No, it's not, and that's kind of, I mean, whatever process council wants is fine, it's just not outlined in the charter. I do think it should be put in writing.
I think it should be put in writing that there must be a meeting called to interview all applicants. So therefore, we can't run into a situation where we just delay the meeting
Right.
for 30 days and then all of a sudden we.
Would that have to be a resolution or an ordinance?
I think it would have to be an ordinance. So a couple of things, one is, let's suppose, I think to Mr. Dunphy's point, if there's not a meeting held, there should be some. Actually, I guess what I'm saying is there actually are a couple of different things I think council should do. One is actually add to the rules of council that when there's a vacancy, that takes priority over anything else on the agenda, because council needs to fill the vacancy. And so it can't be that, oh, the whole meeting goes by and we don't deal with it. That has to be, and it can be a point of order, whatever. Point of order, Mr. President, vacancy on council, that takes priority over everything else on the agenda by rule. The second thing would be the ordinance, which would, whether council wants to adopt Mr. Lawson's proposal or not, I do think that there needs to be something concrete. Part of the problem is, and this is a gap, I think, in the charter says 30 days for council to consider. And then if they don't, then the council president has 15 days. There's nothing in the charter about what if council president doesn't act within that 15 days. So if no one gets appointed after 45 days, there's nothing in the charter for filling that vacancy until the next election, which I think is, I don't want to criticize the framers of the charter, but that seems to be a problem.
I think that we need to look at putting an ordinance together that, I like his idea of being able to have 2 meetings before we do it. Minimum of 2, because I can speak from prior experience. What a lot of people do is they hold their letter to see who else is applying. Okay, to see if there's someone else that they don't like. And then they'll put their letter in. And that's fine. I mean, that's a little cat and mouse game or whatever. It all comes out in the end. But the biggest thing is I think that we need to put together an exact procedure. I think that, you know, you should put out a notice and collect letters in 10 days. Have a meeting the following week to discuss those letters and interview and possibly appoint. But I think that definitely there needs to be a ordinance brought together that there must be a public meeting before the president of city council can appoint.
I think,
That's the only fair thing.
I think the elephant in the room is that we should define a quorum when we're doing. It's defined in the charter what a quorum
I am
of city
not-
council is.
Can't discuss quorum because there is an active pending lawsuit on that right
So
now. I've not talked about
Mr. Flowers raises a good point, and it is true there's pending
litigation.
litigation. So the tricky thing is that there are some cases out there that say for filling vacancies on council, you don't follow the normal quorum rule.
Take the majority of the people that are there.
Right. There are also some cases, on the other hand, that say, oh, you do have to have whatever the ordinary.
Right.
So the problem is there are conflicting lines of cases.
Can't the charter be like the Constitution? Can't amendments be
Yes.
made to that?
Yes. Yes.
But it has to go to the vote of the
It
people.
has to go to the vote of the people.
To approve the amendments? Right, correct. Because
So we can't just change the charter.
You have to have a
No,
charter
that's what
amendment.
that's what that's what I'm saying, yeah.
But yes, it can be. You
Yeah,
can
because
make
I think,
amendments.
the antiquated, it's kind of antiquated in a way that
Extremely.
it's
There's a lot of gray areas.
vague.
Yes. It's
You know?
vague. It's got a lot of gray areas.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of people that are in this world right now that live in the gray.
Yeah.
And that's what they take advantage of, is the
Yeah.
gray area.
If I may, just one thing, I mean,
Just saying.
to Mr. Flowers' point, and this is just a suggestion, would be up to the pleasure of council, but, the rules and the rules could be amended, an ordinance passed, and then council could actually propose to the voters an amendment
Yeah.
to the charter, just lay out the procedure, let the voters have a say.
I believe that.
I
And-
believe that would be a great thing. I think we need to get a committee together, a charter, if I remember right. Isn't it, Greg, to get a committee together to propose the ideas for the amendments? Bring them to council and then put them on the ballot?
I'll defer that question to Mr.
I
Rhodes.
mean, I
So,
think that's how that goes.
Yes, ultimately, to get a charter amendment, that's initiated by council, council would have to by I think it's a 2/3 vote. So it would require 5 votes, in this situation, 5 votes to put it on the ballot. And then it would go, be placed on the ballot, and then there would be the election, and then the amendment would go into effect.
Okay. I think that's something we ought to take a look at, is doing some,
Changing.
not drastic changes, but just refining some of the wording.
Yes.
Because that's where it gets a little confusing when you read what this is, and then you go down over here and you read.
But it says then
And
you
it's
can do this.
contradicting what it says over here a little bit, Or as Tony said, it gets a little gray in between there where you don't know what's black and what's white.
And you just go with whatever.
American Legal Publishing, who is in charge of publishing the Nelsonville Code and the Charter, has put forth some suggestions for amendments to the Charter. It doesn't cover, in my view, everything that could possibly be done, and some of it is just kind of like, oops, there's a word that seems to be missing in this sentence, you
Yeah.
probably noticed.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Yeah,
And actually, it's far more of those than I thought there were, but, just even more broadly, I think amending the charter to clarify some things.
well, and like you said, it's nothing against the people that work diligently.
It's
to
40 years
put
old.
that- Yeah, it's a little antiquated as far as the way we think and the way city
30 years
government works.
If I may, like, one thing that kind of stuck out to me is like the charter procedure for notification for special meetings requires either personal service or posting.
Yes,
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
service.
Well, why not just use email? Of course, email didn't exist, wasn't common then, but like that
We
seems to
lost
be.
we lost the hearing on that once.
Yeah.
I know all about that.
So,
Not getting proper notice.
it doesn't make sense to have the council clerk
Yeah.
have to go
Handle
probably call
oversight.
an officer from the police department, say, oh, by the way, take some time off from your normal patrol and go round up all the council members wherever, but Kroger,
But when that subject would come up, they could go back to that and say it.
Oh, we didn't get notified. I didn't get notified.
Yeah.
I thought the sunshine law that says in there, the notification by email serves the same thing.
Oh, jeez.
By how long?
It does. The tricky thing though is that because the charter has that specific language, the charter language trumps the sunshine law
It does.
on that point.
Right.
All the simple, in this case, the simple change would just be notification shall be provided as by law, which means then council by ordinance could just specify,
Email.
and then that could be changed, like if 5 years from now, email goes away and there's some other, direct,
Yeah.
yes, yes. that could always be changed by ordinance instead of having to stick with that.
That's good.
All right, sounds good. Yes, sir.
Back to the process of interviewing candidates for a vacant seat. We've seen it come right up to the moment to interview. And then the decision is made, well, this is how we're gonna do it.
Right.
So I think that needs to be defined also. Are you gonna interview them individually at the podium? Or if there's three candidates, interview them all together? Are you gonna ask the same question of all three, different questions of all three? I think that all needs to be
Well,
defined.
just to speak at my experience of being interviewed 3 times for an open seat, I'm real comfortable speaking, but I was nervous. So my point is, I think it would be kind of nice to set in an executive session like Tony had said, and just talk to candidates. And see, yeah, openly talk to candidates and see what they're, and then if we feel the need to bring them out and introduce them and let them speak.
See, that's interpretation, if we feel the need. That's not a set
Well, we're
process.
interviewing them.
So also, in an election, the people have an opportunity to hear from candidates at different types of forums. If you interview an executive session, the public has no input, does not hear what's going on, then council comes out, makes a decision, and the people have no input or heard what was said.
But at the same time,
Rick, we just did that 2 weeks ago.
but at the same time, this council members are the one voting.
That's
The
right.
council members are the one voting on who they're for.
Right,
So
but
it is-
I feel that the public has a right to hear what the candidate's
think-
stances are.
I think that it could be possibly a two-pronged thing. It could be interviewed by council in executive session, and then they could be brought out here and if there's any questions from the public, they could be asked about those also. But I honestly believe you're gonna get the true answers you're gonna get, it's gonna be an executive session. Now, like I said, we've done it too many different ways, and I agree with your thoughts. I agree with the theory about transparency.
That's it.
I think that if we interview an executive, the council interviews an executive. If we interview an executive, that we're brought back out, if there's questions asked of the people by a council member in public session, they all have to be asked the same question. In any interview process that I've ever been a part of for any business, you have to ask every candidate the same question. Okay? It's not like all 3 candidates are going to be in that room at the same time. I was interviewed individually.
Mhm.
And I can tell you that there were questions brought up about family. There was questions brought up about stuff that was not going to be brought out in open session. And I was allowed to address situations and address things and was allowed to speak on them.
Yeah, well, I agree.
There's some
It's
personal
two-
information.
It could be a as you said, two-pronged thing. But when you interview in open session, as we've seen, there's a lot of pandering to the public.
Yes, and you guys, yes, the interview process in the public needs to be equal for all candidates. All questions need to be
But
equal.
like you said, it's
And
not the public that's going to be
Right.
making the decision. It's
Right,
us.
but we can interview in executive session first.
Mhm.
And then interview,
Right.
and then the people can hear, if they've got a question, if Sarge has got a question, she's not on council, she can ask them, well, what about so-and-so? What do you about, what about this? What about that? What's your view on this? But at the same time, I can tell you this, when I was interviewed in executive session, I was able to, I wasn't pandering to what to what the people wanted to hear. You can actually just come forward with it, and you can also reveal confidential information that can explain situations that you were put in.
That's right.
And there's things that you can't always talk about.
Right.
Then, same time, we can go through and depending on how many candidates there are, we can weed out ones that we would go, ones we wouldn't go, and just bring out maybe
That's
two
just
or
what
three
he's-
that,
That's what Greg said,
well,
that we shouldn't
open.
do that because of,
well,
what did you say?
if we're gonna do it individually, then, or let's say we get 5 people in here, are we gonna hold a council meeting, five nights straight in a row,
all
just
one
interview?
night, all one night, it's all one night.
But if you do it to the public, they're gonna be, either bring them all in at one time, or you're gonna do it individually.
What you do when you do executive session interview, you do it all one night.
Right.
And you interview them one at a time. And then what you could do is we come back out, no decision is made. You come back out. You allow them to be interviewed out here. If there is a citizen out here that wants to be interviewed, that has some questions, or any council members have some questions that they want on the record, then you can do that. And then you vote in public. Why? You make the nomination. Somebody, you as what I did as president, I said, is there any nominations for the open seat on council? Is there any? And so-and-so will say, I nominate so-and-so. And someone will second it. And then we call the vote. Okay. And you go through and the first person to get the required votes, the majority vote, is the person who takes the council seat.
Can you vote just for one person?
No,
But the
No.
first person to get the vote, you could get them all getting 5 votes.
no. The
No,
first
no.
person who gets the majority is the seat taker.
So
If everybody will have, listen, we've been through this, I've been through this many times. Everybody has somebody that they think that they want. After they interview, they think that they want. You vote, correct, you vote, like, I vote for Joanne LaRue, and you second it. Well, you get 3 votes. Okay, then we say, well, I want Taylor Sappington. He seconds it, call the vote, Taylor gets 3 votes. Now, majority at that time with a council of 6, it's gonna take 4.
Right.
So the next person is Jason Cohen, I nominate Jason Cohen, he gets 4.
Yeah, but
He's
what
got
if they
the
all
council.
got 3s?
Then we have to go back.
That was
The
what.
president-
Yes, then I get your question, then you have to go back. And that's why we wanted to start the interview process early, so that we could have the meeting. If we cannot find anybody, we resubmit the letters. And then we have another one before the 30 days is out, before the city council president can appoint.
That's basically what we know.
I know, well, picking up what you're laying down real slow, but I think that gives plenty of time for people to, for people to speak freely. Because there's a lot of misconceptions in the public eye about what actually happens on council. It's not a lot of top secret stuff. There's no top secret handshake or anything like that. And, and I think that if we do that and council members can actually ask the questions they wanted to ask, you can get to the truthful answers and not be pandering. to
do
the
you
public.
think maybe we ought to have a template for questioning these people?
I think so too. I think.
Which would minimize the amount of time we're back there in executive session?
Well, I think what you could do, you can't give a template on the questions you can ask. We can set a time limit. So that you're not back there.
I mean, why can't we have just kind of something that says, well, we're going to ask these candidates these pertinent questions that relates to what they'll be doing if they're put on city council?
You could ask
It's
them.
like a job interview, right?
It is, but everybody is entitled to their own questions that they want to ask. But they have to ask all the.
Oh, we were talking about public, we were talking about out here though. Well,
No, I'm talking about.
He's talking back there.
Back there, we should have a general topics of what we need to go, but not
Yes,
specific.
but not specific, yeah.
Well, but my point is, if we just have a template of questions, one person can ask the candidates, we can all make our decision on, rather than going down 6 people and saying, what kind of car do you drive? You know, I mean, there's
I see what you're saying.
there's pertinent questions that can be cut to the chase, have the
Well-
council president ask the questions.
Mhm.
We can make the decision off those questions, and then we come back out here and let the citizens ask questions.
Yeah.
if they have any questions. And then we could make a then you could do the nominating process.
Sounds like you have more work to do as a committee,
Well, yeah,
because,
I've got several ideas. Yeah, we're running out of time.
Yeah, I'm out of time.
All right.
well, you got one more item.
Okay, and that is.
Oh, that's right.
That is.
Ballot initiative.
Yeah, the ballot initiative. So, let's see.
I don't think we could talk about that.
I don't think we talked about that, honestly. You
Well,
can talk
I
about
can
it.
say, Reminger and I had advised the clerk of council to put it on the agenda for next meeting. For council discussion. I know the judge stayed his order, but we both believe council should, so what the judge had ordered was that council consider it. And I think council needs to consider it, and whatever action council thinks is appropriate. You know, I guess one of the challenges is, so, and this dates back several city attorneys for at least 10 years, the city's position has been that the state constitutional procedures govern. If it's the pleasure of council to pass a resolution to that effect, that's one option, but I think they need to consider the issue, and there can be discussion about what the appropriate action of council should be.
Okay.
But I think that if enough citizens signed a petition, I think it would behoove us to follow the citizens' wishes. Now, and let me preface that by saying, it matters not to me whether we're a mayoral government or a charter. I mean, I'm not, I don't have a dog in that fight, honestly.
I think the problem with the whole process is number one, I don't think everything, the total cost involved for this changeover was discussed, which is going to be extremely expensive. Since we have not been a mayoral form of government since 1994, that's 30 years of updates. That's 30 years of backlogs. There is a lot of stuff that needs to go, let alone the fact that to pay the money to have the new government wrote up, to have all that stuff done. That's a lot of money.
Well, if I can say one thing to your point, Mr. Dunphy, so let's suppose that it gets on the ballot and the voters vote to get rid of the charter and go back to a mayoral system. Council for the next year would have the duty to pass a whole slew of transitional legislation to facilitate that. And that will take a lot of time, and it's just something that would have to be done, because the ballot can't be 20 pages long. You know, the itself would only kind of give the very high level transitional rules, and it would still be up to council to basically have the baton ready to pass the baton to the new elected officials, should, again, assuming that that's what the voters.
So in other words, we would have to figure out how to get out of a charter and swing it into a mayoral.
Yes, so let me do it kind of in the reverse. You'll notice at the end of the charter that the city currently has, there's a whole section, an article dealing with transitional period.
Right.
Because the charter, when it was moving from the statutory mayoral system to the charter, you have to have government. And so what do you do between when it's passed on the ballot and becomes effective?
Yeah.
There has to be a rule for that transition. And so kind of in the reverse, except this time when it's moving to a statutory form of government, hypothetically getting rid of the charter, then the task falls on council to do all of that legwork.
Yeah, my biggest fear with this is, I was for a mayoral form of government, but if you start to think about things in today's environment and today's world that we live in, having one person instead of 7 have decision-making abilities, that is very scary. Because I can tell you this, there was a person in this community that fought for the charter, fought for the charter, fought for the charter, fought for the charter. And then the last year, things have happened and now is behind going for a mayor. Now, listen to me. The charter was abandoned. The charter was made in 1994 to take the power from a mayor or a foreman and put it in 7 people's hands. Okay, it has been a nightmare at times. Okay, it has been a nightmare. But I can tell you this, that nightmare surrounds a lot of, I'm just gonna cut to the chase, the nightmare surrounds one person. And I think you all can figure out who that is. And the city has succeeded in the 3 years that person was not involved. Okay, we are out of bankruptcy. We are flush with cash, not flush with cash, but in a way better financial situation we ever have been. And now, reintroduce, look what happens.
Well, the thing is the way the charter's set up, it's not just us 7 people.
I know,
What our problem is we're having problems with people in the community getting on our committees to help us govern the way we should be. So it's not just 7 people sitting on the council and making the decision. It's the people on our committees bringing the recommendations up. So
someone likes the retaliation that comes back against you for something that you have done, or something that is pending, or something that could happen. You know, it's ridiculous in today's world. So I get both sides of it.
If I may, just two points, kind of going back to our discussion about charter amendments. Again, this is totally up to council. This isn't, I'm just throwing the idea out there. If council wants a mayoral system, you could always amend the charter to change from a city manager to a mayoral system, and then figure out how to jigger the mayor's powers in a way that makes sense for Nelsonville. That's always an option, but that's not for me to decide. That would be, you know, for Nelsonville council, for the city and the voters. But that is an option.
So you're saying it is etched in stone how the mayoral form of government should run?
Well,
We could choose how we want the mayor to.
yes.
Responsibilities of the mayor.
Under a charter, if you wanted a mayor instead of a city manager, that's always an option. And if so, then the charter sets out the authority and powers of the mayor, which can be different from how the state statute kind of default rules.
And it could stay a charter with the mayor.
Correct, but it would have to be amended.
Which basically, isn't that what the mayoral form of government is? You have a seven person council
Wards,
and then a mayor.
6, you go to wards, back to wards,
I
certain
like
areas. Yeah.
I like wards. No, I do.
Institutional wards, not.
No,
So,
I think we should be responsible for areas.
I think you're right. I agree.
I do.
I think
I'm
that
not
we should be
saying-
responsible for it.
I'm not saying do that or not, I just wanted to throw that idea out for,
That's good.
consideration.
So here's things that we need to work on. We gotta end this meeting, but I think there's things we need to work on. We need to work on the interview process. We need to refine that.
Right.
We need to, I'm going to ask Mr. Lawson to look into in different interview processes and see what we can figure out with that. We need to look into a process for the city manager reviews. I'd like to see if Mr. Flowers wouldn't mind looking into that, see what you can come up with that. And we need to look into this ballot initiative a little bit more. I mean, hey, we had a good discussion, but we do need to bring it in front of council. So I do not have a problem with that. Okay, let's go. All right, so we'll adjourn this meeting at 7:30.